Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So today I will be talking with you guys about trying to get pregnant after having a miscarriage and what that whole process has been like for me so far. It hasn't been easy, so I don't want to sound discouraging, but it's hard. It's a really hard process, and if you're watching this video right now, you're probably going through the same thing, and I just want you to know that I'm here for you, and I've been watching videos and trying to get advice from people who are in a similar situation as me, just to get help and get advice, because it's really hard and you don't know what to expect. You don't know how everything's gonna go. So this video is just talking about my experience with my early miscarriage that I just recently went through, and how I'm trying to still go on the TTC journey and continue forward. So just a little bit about me real quick and my background, since I'm just starting out my channel. I'm Alyssa, and my husband and I have been trying to get pregnant for about, this would be the 9th month of trying, and we actually were finally successful last cycle, and that did not work out, so it ended in an early miscarriage. And right now I'm about 3 weeks, it's been about 3 weeks since my miscarriage, and I've just recently ovulated again. So we made the decision to continue trying, and like I said, I just recently ovulated, so we'll see in a couple of weeks if it worked again or not. We're having our fingers crossed, that it works. I've heard and I've read from a lot of other people who have gone through a similar experience with an early miscarriage, and a lot of women seem to get pregnant the next cycle for some reason. I don't know how factual this is, but you're even more fertile after having a miscarriage for a short window of time, like a few months. So we'll see. I mean, that would be a miracle and absolutely amazing. I can't even describe how amazing that would be. Of course, it's going to be difficult either way, if it works or if it doesn't. If it doesn't work, then obviously we'll keep trying. It'll be very disappointing, but we'll keep trying. If it does work, then oh my god, it's going to be so hard, because going through an early miscarriage is really difficult, and it just makes you really freak out for the future and for the next time you get pregnant, because you just don't want to go through it again. And so yeah, I'm gonna be excited if it does work, but so scared and just so worried that it'll happen again, or it'll happen later on into my pregnancy, which would be even more devastating. The further along you get, the more attached you would get to your baby, and I just can't even imagine, losing a baby later on. So yeah, it's going to be extremely difficult once I do get pregnant again, to relax. I don't know. but we're trying to be as optimistic as possible, my husband and I, and, you know, just trust that there's a plan for everything, and, you know, it'll happen when it's supposed to, so. You know, thankfully it happened early on as opposed to later. Like I said, I couldn't imagine how I would feel losing a baby later on in my pregnancy, after an ultrasound, after, you know, hearing the heartbeat, after all that stuff, and it announcing to everyone. Like, I cannot even imagine the pain that that would cause and you go through. So I just can't even imagine, and so my heart definitely goes out to any of you who've gone through that before. My cat. Come on, come on. Little crybaby. But so a little bit about my experience. Like I said, it did happen about 3 weeks ago, so it is still pretty fresh. I'm doing a lot better now than I was, but you know, obviously talking about it and kind of like reliving it brings up those same emotions. So trying to be as calm as possible, and but it's hard. It's really hard. So basically, my husband and I had been trying for like 7-ish months before I found out I was pregnant. I got a pretty faint line for my first test. I think I was around 12 DPO, days past ovulation. I was going to wait until my period, or if I missed my period, but if you're trying to conceive, you know how that goes. Usually doesn't happen. I was surprised I made it that long, you know, all the way to 12 DPO. But yeah, I took a test that morning, and like I said, it was a faint line. There was a faint positive, and I took 2 tests, and they were both about the same, and I was just not really sure what to think. Yeah, I was just, I don't know, in my head I had this like idea of how I would react if I found out I was pregnant, and I would be like sobbing and just crying and crying and like so excited, and that isn't what happened. Obviously, like, my husband and I were trying, and all I've ever wanted, ever in my life, is to be a mom and to have a baby and just create a family. And so, you know, obviously I wanted to be pregnant and I was so excited, but I think it's just like, after trying for, you know, months and months, I know people try for a lot longer before they find out, but I mean, even those 7 or 8 months that we were trying, you get so disappointed every month when it's negative. And like, I know for me, like, I would just convince myself every month, every cycle, that, well, maybe I'm pregnant, and then I would get in my head and I'd be like, just, you know, noticing every little thing that my body would go through or I experience, and I'd like write it down or put it in my apps and go back on previous cycles and see if my symptoms were similar, or, oh, they're different this time, like maybe I really am pregnant. And I just get so in my head, like, convince myself that I'm probably pregnant. And then I would take a test and it would be negative, just completely negative. Not even a hint of a line. And obviously I would be disappointed, but I would still convince myself, well, maybe it just implanted. Like maybe there's not enough of the hormone being produced yet. Like maybe I'll just wait another day or two and then I'll get a positive. So I'd wait and I'd take another test a day or two later and still be negative. And then my period would come and it was just crushing, like a whole month, a whole cycle is just down the drain. Like it doesn't even matter. And all that work that I put into it, and I mean, obviously it's more stressful, I think, for the woman who goes through it, because you have to, it's your body and you're the one taking OPKs and all that stuff throughout your cycle. And I know it is a little bit stressful probably on your husband, but I mean, let's be real, it's mostly on you. And so that whole past cycle is just down the drain, and it doesn't matter. Like it's gone. That time is gone, and it's so disappointing. So disappointing, and you just have to get through it and keep going and just try again, and know that you're gonna have to go through that whole process over again and try again. And then that next month it still didn't work, and the months kept going by and I just kept getting negatives and negatives and negatives. And so finally that month that I actually did get pregnant and I saw that faint line, I just didn't know what to think. Like, I don't know, I was just so in my head, I was like convinced that I probably still wasn't pregnant. And I don't know, I think I was worried too, because it was really faint and I was 12 DPO. I thought it should be darker by now if I'm actually pregnant. So I showed my husband, and he definitely could see the line. I wasn't crazy, but we both were kind of like, I don't know, like that's just so faint, like it's so hard to see. I don't know. So we're like, we'll just wait and see, like tomorrow, and we'll take another test. And so I did, and if I can remember right, it was about the same as the day before. And so I'm still like just on the fence. Like, we were Googling things and researching and all the mom blogs and all that stuff, right? So, it says if you see any line, you're pregnant. And so my husband just kind of kept telling me that, like, the line will get darker, like, don't worry about it, like, you're pregnant, there's a line, like, you're pregnant. And so we finally started to get like a little excited, but not a lot. And I waited until the next day, 14 DPO, when I should have gotten my period, and the line was darker. And I took a digital, and I think it was the first response ones that said yes or no, and it said yes. And so my husband was really excited. He told some of his closest friends. I texted my brother and my cousin, and we were starting to get pretty excited. The next day after that, I tested. Seriously, I was obsessive. I tested at least twice a day. Like in the morning, first morning urine, and then sometime like after work, in that late afternoon, early evening, I would test again. I'd be holding my pee like during work and test again. And the lines were getting darker, but it was definitely slow, like slowly darker. The progression was there. Like I would go back, a couple days or a few days before, and if I compared those two, like I could see definitely an increase, like in the darkness, but overall, like, because I had them lined up, you know, like a crazy person, all my tests, and there wasn't, like, from day to day, it wasn't that much different. And I'm like looking online and looking on all these forums of line progressions, and on YouTube even line progressions, and when you're pregnant, it seems like they get dark so quickly. Like, I know the HCG level is supposed to double every 48 hours or so, so every other day your line should be getting quite a bit darker, and it wasn't for me. Like, it was getting darker, but not like it should be. So this whole time I'm thinking, like, something's just not right. Like, the line is not as dark as it should be. And my husband kept telling me, like, just relax, stop testing, like, you're pregnant, the lines are there. By this point I had gotten pregnant on a clear blue digital, and he just kept telling me, like, stop testing, you're pregnant, and stop worrying about the lines getting darker. For some people, we were reading online, like, it takes a while for the lines to get darker, like, just relax, you know. And I just couldn't. I was just obsessive. I was testing so much. I wanted to see it get super dark, and it wasn't. And I was getting so frustrated, so frustrated. I just felt like something wasn't right. And I just kept getting, like, reassurance on my apps where, like, you can post in, like, community tabs, like on Glow, and you can get people's advice, and people just kept telling me, like, don't stress out, it'll get darker, you're definitely pregnant, congratulations, and all that. And like I said, my husband just wanted me to stop testing and just, you know, accept that I'm pregnant and just, it'll be okay. And so I finally started to relax a little bit, and like, it finally started to set in, like, I'm pregnant, like, I was so excited, like, it was finally all hitting me, and I started downloading all of the pregnancy apps where you can, like, see how big your baby is, and like, you know, all those things, like the bump and what to expect and those kinds of apps. And I was, like, looking all into those, and I would see, like, how big it would be a week from now, and what things were changing with the baby, and when its heart would start beating, and just all those things that make it seem so real, you know. I was spending all my time looking through those things, and, like, looking at baby names, and I even ordered like, pregnancy announcement surprise gifts for my family, for my parents, and then something for my sister, because she would be an aunt. And we were going to tell my parents the following weekend, because we wanted to tell them early, since my mom is a nurse practitioner, and she works in the NICU around here, and she knows all the OBGYNs pretty well, and so I wanted to get her advice on who to make an appointment with for my first, like, ultrasound. And so I wanted to tell them quickly so that I could, you know, make an appointment with someone who she thought would be a good match for me. I started getting some cramping, and I felt a lot like period cramping, which I read again online, like, oh, that's normal. Most women experience that, and it's just, that happens during early pregnancy. So I'm like, it's probably nothing, but I'm also freaking out. So I think that next Friday, I went to work, and I was still having some cramping, and I had taken a test or two, I think 2 different brands of tests that morning, and the line looked a little bit fainter. Like, not the same or darker, but a little bit fainter even than the day before. And so I got really, really nervous, really scared. Like, that should definitely not be happening. It was my first morning urine, like the strongest, most concentrated kind, and it was a little bit lighter. So I was like, something's not right. Like, this is definitely not good. The day continued, and early afternoon, I felt something like, you know, when you're starting your period and you feel like something coming out, right? Something that feels kind of wet down there. That's how it felt. And I went to the bathroom, and there was some brown spotting. And I immediately was like, oh my God, here we go. Like, I knew it. I knew it was too good to be true. It's happening. And I started to really freak out. I went to the bathroom again like a half hour later because I noticed it was still coming out, and it was red, like bright red. And from everything I've read, that brown or pink spotting is normal and fine, but like bright red blood isn't good, and that usually means, you know, like you're miscarrying. So the panic really started to set in. Like, I started crying at work. I was just like starting to be just a mess, and it was getting close to the end of the day, so like I wanted to leave even before then, just to go to the doctor and see if there's anything they can do, like if they can draw my blood and just see where my levels are at, just like something, because I knew I just couldn't go home and do nothing, you know? I gotta go crazy. So I ended up staying the rest of the day until 3-ish, and then I didn't go home first. I went straight to like the walk-in convenient care type place, because I didn't have a doctor set up. I didn't have an appointment with an OBGYN already who I could have called to get their advice or to order blood work, and I don't have a primary around here. So I didn't know what to do. So I went to the walk-in just hoping that one of the doctors there could order lab work or just do something. And I waited, and I went in, and they took my blood pressure, and that's pretty much it. And then the doctor or nurse practitioner, someone, came back and was like, I can't really do anything for you here. You need to go to the ER. And I was just like, what? What's going on? Like, seriously? I have to go to the emergency room now? And they said that they couldn't do anything, and that if I needed to get any type of blood work done, I'd have to go to the ER, and they would do it there. So I'm like really freaking out, and I went over there. I drove and just parked and got out, and I went in, and first of all, I went in, I'd never been there before, so I went into like the wrong entrance, and I had to walk all the way to where the actual emergency room is, and I'm standing at the counter waiting for a nurse or someone to come talk to me and like I don't know how they do it there. So the only time I'd ever been to the emergency room besides this was when I was like 10, because I had gotten bitten by a dog in the mouth, and they thought I might have rabies or something. So I have no idea what to expect. I don't go to the emergency room. I don't know how things work. So I just stood at the counter like a loser, and I didn't know what to do. There was nobody around. Finally a nurse comes and tells me like, hold on a second, I'll be right with you. So I'm just standing there, and then these people start coming in. Like, there's already some people in the waiting room, but then these other people start coming in behind me, and they also are going to be seen at the ER, I guess. So like they're lined up right behind me, like right behind me, and the nurse comes finally and sits down, and she's asking me for my name and my like date of birth and all that, and she's like, why are you here? Like, what do you need to be seen about? And it's just so uncomfortable. Like, it was dead quiet in there, and no one was talking in the waiting room. There's probably like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 people in the waiting room, which was right there. And then, like I said, there was a couple people behind me, right behind me, like, you know when people line up and they're like too close to you? That's how it was, of course. And so it's dead quiet. There's not a TV on or anything. And she asked me that, and I'm just like, whew. I'm here because I think I'm having a miscarriage. Like, I don't know what else to say. And then she like asked me how far along I thought I was, and then she just was like, okay, like, put out your arm, I'm gonna put your bracelet on, and then you can go sit down. And that was it. And like, I know everyone around me definitely heard me, so it was just awkward and uncomfortable, and I don't know, it just makes you feel weird. Like, it's already a bad enough situation, and then it just like, it was just really awkward. So I waited in the waiting room for, I don't know, it seemed like forever, probably like 20 minutes. It wasn't that long. I texted my husband, and then he called me and said he was going to leave work a little bit early and meet me there. And so before he could get there, they called me back and like brought me to a little, I don't know, cubicle thing, whatever. And I had to get changed into the gown, and they needed a urine sample. And so when I was doing that, my husband, I guess, got there, and then when I came back from peeing in a cup, there was my husband, and oh, that was really hard. Seeing his face. He just looked really upset, and he's not the type of person that usually gets upset, so it was hard to see. So anyway, after I did that, I got changed into the gown. The doctor came in, was asking me a whole bunch of questions, and like what kind of bleeding, how long have I been bleeding, if this was my first pregnancy, or like when my last period was, and just all this stuff. And she said she'd order some blood work, and we might do an internal ultrasound since it was early. They couldn't do one on the outside, they'd have to go in vaginally, which I was like, great, like that sounds so fun. But, you know, obviously whatever they need to do to figure out what's going on, I understood, you know. And so, I guess she was a nurse. I don't know what she was. She came in, and she was really nice, really nice. And she was asking, like, if we were trying to have a baby, and, you know, we told her yeah, and she said she's had, I don't know, 2 or 3 kids, whatever she said, and she's bled for each of them, and one of them she said she bled a lot, and it was red, and it was some kind of like, I forget what she said, some kind of hemorrhaging of something, and then that went away, and like the baby was still fine and continued to grow, and like she gave birth and everything was fine. And she just kept telling me like, everything's probably okay. Yeah, that happened to me, like you're probably fine. And so I felt a little bit better, like I was starting to be a little bit more relieved, you know. So was my husband. And then another nurse came in after that one had gone, and she took some blood, which is always a horrible experience for me. I don't do well with needles or blood, so both of them together is just like, whew, just like I just want to throw up and die. So that was not good for me. That made me feel more sick. The doctor and a nurse came back in, and she gave me my results of my blood work, and said that they were low, like a lot lower than, you know, they should have been, if the HCG levels were rising as, you know, quickly as they should be when you're pregnant. And she said they were too low for how far along I thought I was, about 5 weeks. So she said from her experience that with my numbers being that low and my bleeding and cramping, that I was likely experiencing an early miscarriage. And you know, there's not really much you could do. There's not really anything you could do. She said to call the doctor. She, like, when I was discharged, they printed out a paper with all of my stats, and a doctor to call on Monday, because that was a Friday that I went into the ER. To call that doctor on Monday and get lab work done again to, like, confirm that I was miscarrying and see what my levels were then, if they were about the same or if they had decreased, or what. But, you know, in her professional opinion, in her experience, I was experiencing a miscarriage. And that was pretty much it. I had to drive home alone, and let me tell you, that car was not very enjoyable. I pretty much lost it, and it was really rough. And then once we both got home, we pretty much just sat there on the couch and just cried. I cried a lot. It's definitely really hard, and sucks. So I did end up going in on Monday. So that was also like, oh my god, just a shit show. That Monday I had off work, and I was calling that doctor on the paper that they gave me when I was discharged from the ER. And it was just like, every time I would call, like, I'd be put on hold, and then they would tell me like, well, I don't know why you're calling this office, like you need to call this other office, and they would transfer me, and then I'd be on hold, and then they'd tell me like, well, this isn't the right office, you need to call this office. It was just like this like toss around game. I just felt like everyone just kept like pushing me off and like telling me like I was calling the wrong place and I just needed to call this other doctor, and it just kept going around and around, and I'd be on hold forever, and or they'd tell me like they'd call me back and it would take a while, and it was just so annoying. Like, all I want to do is get blood work done. Like, that's it. Like, can someone just help me? And finally my husband, I think, called one of the offices and, you know, wasn't very nice. I made an appointment with one of the OBGYNs around here, and for the next day, and said that I need to come in and get blood work done that day on Monday, so that the doctor could go over results with me on my appointment on Tuesday. So, like, finally, like, okay, awesome, great, thanks. That's what we wanted, that's all we wanted. And I went in to get lab work, and it was super fast, and I left, and that next day, on Tuesday, I went to work, and then my appointment was right after work, so I went straight to the doctor. My husband met me there, and it was a really short appointment. Like, we waited for a while, I feel like, and then the actual appointment was only like 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. Probably not 10 minutes, but, you know, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. It was really short, and basically the doctor just, you know, went over my blood work, and at that point it was at a 3 in the HCG level. So, you know, like, basically all of it's out of my system. I was still spotting at that point, but like most of the blood had passed, and so he told me that 9 out of 10 times it's because something genetically was wrong with it, and, you know, all that. So just to make me feel better, like it wasn't, you know, anything I did, which I understand, because initially that's what you think, that it's something you did and it's your fault. But you know, he tried to reassure me that it wasn't anything I did, and it's just for the best. And he also said that they used to recommend waiting a cycle before trying again, but they don't do that anymore, and then I could start trying again right away. So that's what we did. Like I said, it's about 3 weeks since the whole thing happened, since I started my miscarriage, and I started taking OPKs again, like cycle day 13, I think. And I normally don't ovulate until around day 20 anyway, but I wanted to start taking them a little earlier than usual, just in case. And I just ovulated yesterday, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes in a couple weeks, if I get my period or not. Yeah, it's gonna be rough no matter what, I feel like. So I'll definitely keep you guys updated on what happens this cycle, and I'll keep you guys posted.